Welcome back, everybody. It's so great to have you back from our breakout sessions. We have a really exciting afternoon plan, so I hope you all got a chance to move your body and grab some refreshments on our break. Before we dive into our Future of Testing Roundtable, I wanted to share with you the first ever Capado Demo Jam winner. The winner of the Capado Demo Jam is Elements Cloud. Congratulations, Elements Cloud team. It was some fierce competition, really great demos from everybody involved. So thank you and congratulations. As we head into the Future of Testing Roundtable, I'd like to welcome Nikhil Sharma, Director of Test Automation at Capado. Welcome, Nikhil, and thank you so much for hosting our panel discussion today.
Hey, Ashley, good to see you. Yeah, hi. I'm thrilled to have this discussion with the panelists. Looking forward to it. It's going to be really exciting.
Likewise, we really have an all-star panel here, so let's go ahead and bring them on. We have Sheetal Chogul, Capado Champion and Business Technology Solution Manager at ZS. We have Deepa Joshi, Global Head of Delivery for QA at Jade, and Julian Joseph, Salesforce Quality Architect at Agent Sync. Thank you all for joining us today. Nikhil is going to be leading our panel discussion, and then we will open it up for live Q&A. So be sure to post any questions that you have in the chat. Over to you, Nikhil.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. All right. Before we start, I'm going to really take time out to thank you for participating in this. And I know like for at least a couple of our panelists, it's really late in the evening. So really thanks a lot for staying late and looking forward to this discussion with you. Before we jump in, I would like to say that one of the best phrases I have heard about quality so far is that good quality gets unnoticed, but bad quality or lack of good quality gets noticed instantly. And that kind of talks a lot about quality and quality mindset. I would like to ask you guys, how have you ended up in your QA careers where you are today? How has the journey been? If there are stories you would like to share with us. Sheetal, would you like to go first?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Nikhil, and thank you, Capado, and the entire team for having us here on the roundtable. So let me start with one thing. I think the entire panel is from the QA, and I am basically a Salesforce architect and a delivery manager. But the most important thing that I have learned over my 15, 16 years of journey in Salesforce is when you start your development, the most important role that is helping you is testing the applications, because you cannot develop an application that is sustainable and is having the quality that you talked about without actually participating and understanding that quality like mindset. So if you don't have that mindset, it's very difficult. And I think I'm really glad. And one quote that I remember from one of my colleagues is, I'm very good in finding bugs. So I think that's where I started my journey, and I started thinking like, okay, testing is part of your entire life cycle. It's not like something just a phase in your life cycle of the projects.
That's very well said. On that note, Deepa, how has your QA journey been?
Hi, Nikhil. Thanks for having me here. I'm working as a director with Jade Global. I'm heading next gen QA quality engineering here. When I say quality engineering, it includes your DevOps, it includes your AI, it includes your RPA, so much when we talk about QA and engineering. My journey has been, I started as a developer and then I switched to testing, quality engineering. So I played multiple roles, and throughout my journey, I have always seen quality team to be at the center who knows end-to-end system. While the pod are focused on their own area, quality team is the one who knows the end-to-end functionality, and that's where I have seen a lot of stories, having a lot of discussions, roundtables, around the defects and issues between developers and testers. But I have always seen that when a project goes live and it's rolled out, the quality team is always valued and their inputs is appreciated.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, if you're developing something, you're probably just talking to the next layer that integrates with you. But if you're a tester, you have to go beyond those layers to understand how it's going to work and how it shouldn't work in certain cases. On that note, Julian, what's your story?
Yes, thanks so much for having me and the giant Astro behind me. My boyfriend wouldn't let me leave Trailblazer DX without bringing it back.
You're
bringing
both
them
very
back.
welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so for me, my journey was, I guess, a bit unique, I'd say, although maybe not that unique in the Salesforce realm, just because so many people come from different careers. But I definitely came from the Salesforce industry. I actually majored in liberal arts, so something very different. Ended up interning at a nonprofit as a Salesforce admin. You could say an accidental admin. Moved over into a Salesforce ISV. So that's a Salesforce partner doing technical support. And then was on a team where there was not any testing happening. And so I was actually giving the product to customers untested. And I was seeing the effects of that being on technical support and hearing a lot of responses back from customers. And so I decided to start testing it myself, and I began to realize through some coaching that, I'm basically a QA. So I switched over to that QA role within that company, made my way over to Salesforce.com proper, and was a quality engineer there. And now I'm actually back at a Salesforce partner, leading some testing efforts. But I'm actually also a bit of wearing a few hats right now. On the testing side a bit, but actually kind of in transition to a little bit more of the larger automation Salesforce DevOps piece of it. So have a little bit of experience on both ends.
Well, that's very inspiring to hear, like people from architect backgrounds, from developer and from liberal arts, all entering QA and finding a career there and progressing in it. So it's a welcoming sign to everyone who is hearing in our audience that there are like a lot of places where you can enter QA and then progress there. Like I myself have been a researcher. I've been researching on propulsion system of icebreakers before I entered quality assurance. So I'm always curious to meet people who have entered from different backgrounds. I'm going to start with you, Julian, but what makes a good tester? What is it?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this, I'll say. And honestly, I have a lot of opinions that change over time as I've been testing. And I think early on in my career, I would have told you something like just knowing the testing fundamentals, knowing the differences between different testing types, integration, feature testing, things like that, when to use automation, which I think are all really important. But nowadays, I would actually say what makes a good tester is not being satisfied with just the idea that this is just going to work as is. And basically having that kind of like inquisitive mindset of, well, is this really going to work for everybody? For example, doing things like accessibility testing, thinking about people who may not be able to use the product or the features in the exact same way as others, or just thinking really creatively about what somebody might want to get out of a product that is maybe not obvious, not even the product's intention, and trying to test it in that way. And so it's really having that mindset, that kind of like almost like blank mindset of not assuming that this product is going to work the way that it was intended, but coming at it from different angles, and being able to think creatively and just being open to just not taking the face value of the product as is, but instead always just thinking around it and just getting creative with those ways you're going to test.
I like it. Sheetal, any thoughts?
Yep. So I think the first thing is if I think about a testing overall, a tester or someone who would make a good tester is who can think from a business perspective, who can disassociate him from the entire being told kind of a personas that we have, where the most of the times we are explaining the business processes to the QAs and asking them to test. Rather, he's having, as Julian mentioned, a more kind of an open mind and exploring and just thinking about going beyond and being someone who can think as a customer. What will be the experience? Who will be the type of people who will actually be using your applications? These are the people who will never think about the boundaries. They will explore everything. Doesn't matter what you're telling them, they will try to explore more and more, and they'll try to break your application in every possible way.
Deepa, any thoughts? What makes a good tester?
Absolutely. So I do agree with Sheetal. Going beyond and thinking out of the box is very important for a tester to be a good tester. Understanding from a user's perspective, like understanding what this product is meant to do, and who are your customers, and what is the targeted customer, and then thinking from their shoes and trying to understand how they would use this tool, and what would be their thoughts when they use this tool, whether this is easy to use, whether they don't have to really stick to the acceptance criteria or the BA's thoughts or the developers understanding, but they can go beyond their boundaries to and think little out of the box to understand how this product is going to behave in the production or in the real world. That would surely make a good tester, Nikhil.
That's really good points that you guys raised, and we were having this discussion with Sheetal earlier that a lot of job applications that you see out there for testers, what they're asking for is your technical skills. Do you know Python? Do you know XYZ product? Do you know this framework? Rarely, what they forget to ask is like, do you have a curious mind? Can you think out of the box? Do you have that inquisitiveness? Can you empathize with your end user and customers and walk in their shoes and really like go beyond the definition that a business analyst has put out there? Very good points. Thank you so much. How has the role of a tester has changed over a period of time from waterfall to agile and now DevOps? And how do you foresee it's gonna likely change in the coming future? Sheetal.
Oh, I think their journey has been just like how we have transformed from waterfall to agile to DevOps. It's though harder than going from one path to other. I mean, uh, initially it used to be just a stream or set of people who are uh, treated like an enemies of developers who are just there to find the bugs and make your application break. So it's like they're treated like completely differently, and they had specific skill set where they are aware of the tools. How do you know how to use the templates and write the scripts and just maintain the scripts, and that's it. You're done. So that is no longer the kind of a mindset a tester can carry forward. The way we have been evolving in this technology landscape, they have to make sure they are also upskilled in the same way any developer would be doing. Because with the evolution of the bots and the AI and the ML, we need more testers who can do an end-to-end testing, not only a single application, but across the different types of applications. So it's not only about knowing, as Julian mentioned, it's not only about knowing the testing frameworks, but it's evolving and understanding how the landscape has been changing for development as well. That's the most important perspective that we have to bring into the testing now. And they have to think about the tools, like how they can leverage and explore it as far as they can. What are the different types of testing I need to do? What are the different types of data operations I might have to do? So that's going to be really challenging going forward, and it can no longer be a separate SDLC phase. I'll say it's going to be a part of your development lifecycle.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more so. That's what we see in the market with a whole conversation around shifting left, bringing testing early enough your software development.
Yes.
Deepa, what are your thoughts? How has the role changed over a period of time, and how do you foresee it changing in the future?
Sure. So a few years back, Nikhil, there were very countable tools available in market for testing. Now with the technology upgrade and so many tools upcoming in market, it's very important for a tester to be relevant. I mean, I think the left shift and the right shift is still very much applicable. Like, take an example, like, we do a RCA of the UAT defects, and you see a maximum defects found because of some requirements not identified in the beginning, right? So earlier, testers were involved only during the SIT phase when the development is completed and they are supposed to test. But now the thought process has changed. People want to include tester right from the design phase, from the requirement capturing phase, where you do BTD, where you do requirement analysis, trying to identify the defects early in the stage, and that saves a lot of efforts later and gives a better ROI. And not only in the design phase, testers are getting involved in the operations. Once the things are gone into production, you are there to create a bot, quickly identify the issues coming up on production. And so testers are not stopping at some UAT or SIT level nowadays. They are all over, and the journey starts from day one, when the requirements start, when the due diligence is happening, till you go on with the operations and all. So and it's going to be more growing in the future, going beyond the operations and trying to do some predictive analysis on the defects and trying to identify the issues generally happening, and trying to come up maybe with some algorithms to test, to create the test, or fix the scripts on its own. There are many tools which are available in market, which are low code, no code, like Copado itself, where you don't have to do too much of coding, and still you're relevant, you do DevOps. I think the trend is, the as and when the technology evolves, testing is going to be a key there, and there is going to be a lot of AI ML implemented in testing as well.
We will touch on the artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's a thing everyone wants to know more about, and how it will impact testing. Before we go there, Julian, you have some thoughts about the role of a tester in how it has evolved over a period of time, and how do you foresee that it's going to be in coming future?
Definitely, yeah, and I agree with really everything I've been hearing. In particular, I think I was hearing about like bringing the tester in early from Deepa in the design phase, and yeah, I'm totally for that. My recommendation with companies or with somebody building a new product is bring testers in day zero. And what I mean by that is, like, from the design, from the first point that you're having that idea, it's not just presenting them even with the architecture, which many companies would probably say that's pretty early in the phase. Well, it's not even at that point. It's actually bringing them into design. And I think a lot of that comes from the role of the tester within the team, being the voice of the customer. And so you're basically thinking of a tester as like somebody who is actually representing your customer, getting that really early feedback in the same way you would want to do beta testing with customers as early as possible, to get that feedback. Really, you could be doing this testing right as you're designing the product, with effectively somebody who is representing the customer, because they probably use the product in many ways that a customer has, and they're able to give that feedback right from the beginning. I also like to think of like testers, QAs, of having this superpower of being able to test within their heads or within their minds, and so just being able to see as soon as the product is described, they're able to tell you, that is probably going to work or not going to work, because they can think of a time that's worked for them or not. Of course, there's still a conversation there about how it can be built and ways around it, but just really utilizing that tester as the earliest user, the earliest customer, somebody who can give you feedback right from the beginning, who knows your product inside out. I know she's always talking a lot about the skills of a tester and like being an end-to-end tester, and I think that's another important piece. And I would just say that in terms of like being the customer, that's basically them representing many kinds of customers, because they're both the individual, maybe end user, they also might be the power user, they might be the admin, because they've usually tested the product from those different angles. And if they have that skill set, they're able to like bring in that knowledge and bring in that conversation really early into the process. But yeah, I think just thinking of them as the customer on the team.
I'm really liking this like underlying theme of all of you saying that tester is actually a voice of customer. I think that's a very insightful thing. I really enjoy that. So we've spoken about so far about role of a tester, good tester, and whatnot. What are the challenges that the testers and testing in general face today, and what would your recommendations be? How would we overcome those challenges? Julian, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to share. My thought is actually the biggest challenge for a tester actually resides in the business side. So Nikhil, I think you brought up how good quality is basically invisible to a certain degree. And from what I've seen, I mean, there's some really great organizations out there, some really healthy organizations that I think champion testing and make it a priority. But I still see it's pretty often thought of as an afterthought or as a nice to have, or something that is only scaled up as a result of some big issues. And it creates this, I would say, uncomfortable place for a lot of testers at times, of where, like, do you fix the issues and make it seem like your job is almost unnecessary, or does the issue get through and then it kind of like proves your need? And ideally, like that's not a great place to be in. And I think any good tester would say, no, we're going to fix the issue and we're going to make it seem like we're invisible. But I think, yeah, just finding ways. I found being a tester and being on the QA side, it's really important for me to talk about the value that I'm adding and the value that my team, the team I'm working with, that we're adding to the product on a regular basis, talking about the big issues that we have fixed, and then also just like keeping in constant communication with the developers on the team, project managers, just reminding them of our value throughout the process. So it's not forgotten that there's so many things that are being caught and prevented from customers seeing, and those pieces just are not forgotten along the way.
Great thoughts there. Deepa, do you have any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, sure, Nikhil. So I agree with Julian. The thing is, the most uncomfortable situation for a QA person is when I mean, because of the rollout pressure and short delivery timelines. People tend to defer the defects which has been identified. They put it in a low priority and plan to fix it in next release, and then they release the product with some of the known defects, and that I think would be a very uncomfortable situation for a QA to accept that. But sometimes you have to go with the strategic plans and understand and try to stick to the team. But yeah, I think that is always an uncomfortable situation where there is a defect and still you're letting the release go and you're signing off.
Yeah, Sheetal, how about you?
I couldn't agree more with whatever Julian and Deepa has already said, but I also have one more thing that I have been seeing a lot in the projects, especially doesn't matter if it's a small or an enterprise level organization. The first problem that we are facing is every time we start a new project, we start off with, okay, we don't have any testing strategies, we do not have any tools. Let's start with the POVs. So the initial period of tester is mostly spent on understanding, okay, what are the tools I need to explore, understanding, compare them, and then the client is like, okay, we are still sticking to the manual testing. So I think there is this major problem where we are still weighing over the manual testing rather than moving on to the automations. The importance of moving into automation testing with the growing need of the enterprise or small level projects is a major concern for testers today. How can I pitch to my client why it is imperative for him to implement the automation testing tools? So I think like that is something we need to train our testers also on how we can build that kind of a confidence. Like if I am testing right now with these manual testing frameworks, this is the time I'm spending. This is the effort you're spending. This is the money you're spending on testing and the quality and how it will be improved over the period of time. Maybe initially it will be a one-time investment for you, but after that, how it will go, like in the long term, sustainable framework that is repetitive. You don't have to do it again and again and again and just keep on doing it. And I think the second challenge that they're facing right now is with the every Salesforce release, how can I keep my scripts updating? Every Salesforce release, there is something new which is being introduced. Every time there is a developer that is changing, or there is some deprecated system, or there is a deprecated method, or there is something new that is introduced. How can I keep myself into that flow? So I think it's more of for him with the new technologies and new DevOps processes that projects are implementing, how can I keep up with all the tools those are in the market? Which ones should be on my priority? Which are the top three tools I should be learning if I want to switch into automations?
Yeah. Well, I hear one thing that I would like to raise is the is a general. I've heard this quite many times that somehow QA is always against the business, or it is positioned against the business. The business is a gentle nudge to business that hey, it's not our intent to be against business. We want to make sure that everything is fine and people would love the end results of what we're building rather than rushing into it. So far we have been speaking about like today and past, and I would like to kind of have a segue towards the future as well. What are like the top trends in technologies that you see will revolutionize the testing industry, test automation, testing in general, quality assurance at large? Sheetal, do you want to go first?
Oh, yes. I would love to start off with ChatGPT. So it's like everyone today is talking about how ChatGPT is going to eat up your technology roles, but I think that's something is going to take away your testing roles as well. But just jokes apart, but I think with the growing technologies and the different types of tools and the landscapes and new frameworks specifically, for example, we started off with waterfall, we moved into agile, then DevOps, DevSecOps, and so more. Over the period of time, will keep on evolving. Now, over these kind of a technologies, when you are growing into, there are more and more frameworks, more practices, more architectural insights that we need to generate for testers as well. I mean, they are always feel like left apart from all these technology trends, and these specifically are embedded into the system. Now, if I am building a system which is end to end implementing bots, AI, ML, multiple languages, and so many systems integrated on a single platform, what would you expect a tester to perform a testing on? How many tools he needs to explore? Which are the tools he needs to support for these all these things? So he needs to be aware on the latest trends in the market as well. What are the AI ML supported tools and technologies that I should be exploring, which I can leverage as my automation testing? Is there any specific tool I can use instead of 10 different tools that I'm currently using? How beneficial it would be for me. I mean, it's not only about evaluating or just getting it or incorporating that tool. It's also about understanding what are the benefits. What is going to be the go-to market time for me with that tool? And that is, I think, everyone and every business is most interested into. How fast you can just test the application if there are new changes and release it onto the live environment.
Deepa, any thoughts about the top technological trends in the market and how would they impact testing, test automation, and QA at large?
Right. I do agree with Sheetal, and she's given a very great example of Salesforce upgrading frequently, and then there are a lot of things that get deprecated, and there's a need to fix your automation scripts, and that's where I think the technology is trending and trying to get to, self-healing and self-healing the scripts, identifying the scope with the data trend in production, and then selecting the automation test scripts based on the data available, applying some artificial intelligence to it. That's something that's going to come very soon. We have seen low code, no code testing already in place, and with the high demand on internet, like everybody is putting everything on internet, and you got to be on cloud, and there's very less time. Within very less time, you have to roll out your application, because technology is changing so fast that you want to be relevant before it becomes irrelevant, right? So there's so much of need to quickly turn around, and that's where the testing tools are meant to quickly be available, and the automation scripts should be created super fast, and there's no time for people to really fix those scripts, and also it should be going towards this self-healing thing. I do agree with Sheetal. The AI, ML, and the robotic things are soon going to be a future of test automation and testing for sure.
Julian, any trends to look out for, and how will they impact testers and testing tools?
Yeah. I totally agree with that. AI auto healing is, I think, something that I'm definitely interested in keeping an eye on and how it's working. It seems like every tool is adding that in, but it's also adding it in their own flavor and in their own way. I think there's a lot of questions about when should a test heal in particular. And so I think I see testers as being the ones who are going to probably be answering that question down the line. Like, there's always going to need to be that human element, or at least for the foreseeable future, that human element of knowing should it have healed in this situation, or is it actually a test failure?
Yeah.
And because some of those questions are they're subjective questions. Sometimes you don't care that it failed in a way that doesn't really impact the user. Other times it's very important the way it's impacted the user. And so looking at these tools, some of them do things like text comparison, which is interesting to see. Others do image comparison. Some do look at the actual locators in the background and compare them that way. Many of them kind of combine these different methods and rate them. And it's really still up to a human to go in and say, this is the proper way to do this comparison. This is the proper way to say that it's failed or not. Speaking about ChatGPT, because you always have to at this point, I think just in the short term, like it can feel like a lot of these AI tools are more automation focused, and many of them are. But I think even for the manual testers or those who are making a transition, it's still, or those doing more exploratory testing, I think these tools are already today very interesting, like using ChatGPT to create test plans. Just as an example, like I've given ChatGPT a prompt to let them know a developer's creating a new field in Salesforce, and what are the different ways that I can test this, or what are the ways it can break, and continuing to ask it to think of other more creative ways, and using your own imagination to kind of inject inject some of that creativity and then let it kind of riff on it and give you even more situations that you haven't thought of yet. And so I think it's usable today in a very simple way through a lot of these text-based interactions. But definitely long term, I think the tester will turn more into the one making that determination about what is a true test failure and what are a reasonable number of tests to run.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point you raise, and I have been in very long heated discussions around this topic when it is claimed that tests don't break. And what does it really mean when tests don't break? They are supposed to break if there is a failure. That's the whole point of testing, right? So if you're gonna auto heal everything and there is probably no problem there and 100% green, is that what you're looking for? That's a very good point. Like you still need that subjective decision making and with that, what Sheetal was saying, the subject matter expertise and domain knowledge that whether this is really qualified for auto healing or not, instead of autopilot. Or I don't see, at least in the near future, that it's gonna be all autopilot mode. So we spoke about the test on artificial intelligence and machine learning being from a tooling point of view, more from like how the tools would evolve. What do you think? How would it impact testers? Before we go there, have you all been a manual tester at some point? Yeah. Were you ever threatened when people started talking about test automation about your jobs? I was. That's why I'm asking. Yeah, I see like a nods.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Nikhil, this is still there. I mean, not only for the automation testers, and even I mean, not only for the manual testers, even the automation testers are worried about being irrelevant because there's a lot of discussions that the developer has to do everything, and even a BA can do everything. Although I personally believe that I have been seeing this for last many years. Like I've got 25 years of experience in this industry, and I've been I've seen 2 decades where this fear was always existing that testers would be required in future, but that never happened because the human touch, like you said, is very much required. And as in when the technology grows, and there is always a need of a tester to test things. You can have automation in a stable environment, but when you're building something and it's new, there's always a technology upgrade. There is always a new things that is coming up in market, and for a tool to come up with that solution will always take time, and there would be a manual tester who would be required, who understands the domain, and who understands the end-to-end solutions, and who are cross-trained to cater the end-to-end test cases, for sure. I mean, manual testers are not going anywhere so soon.
Yeah, and they don't need to. They can support each other very, very well. Sheetal, you had something to say about this topic.
Yes, definitely. So like on what Deepa explained, right? I think it's definitely a human behavior to get threatened when something like new technology, new tool that is being introduced in the system. But I think, as Deepa mentioned, a role of a manual tester is not gonna go away because um, even if we say like a developer is gonna be a full packaged kind of a T-shaped skills, like you do everything, broad and depth and everything, but the roles we structure in a project, we have a dedicated role for a tester for a reason. The way a tester thinks can never match a way a developer thinks, because developer will always have a perspective about what he has developed, and only in that direction his mind will think about it. Tester doesn't have any boundaries. He's not bounded by that time box thing or any kind of limitations on, okay, this is how my application should be behaving. He is there to explore what an application can do and cannot do. the should do is like the part where it comes into like out of scope and in scope and all those things. But definitely, I think instead of being threatened, testers should now focus on how they can keep themselves into that T section. They need to be upskilled on the business domain as well, because the more they have the business domain, the more logical testing, the results, and everything would be towards the perfection. And I think that's why, like, yeah, it's there is a reason to be threatened, but there are some things which you can still do to make sure you're still the center of the heart. You're not going to go away.
Julian, were you threatened with automation?
Yeah, I was when you asked that question, I was kind of nodding, but kind of thinking about it because I think I was really fortunate to when that question I think was like the most pertinent for me. I was at I'd say, really healthy organization with a really healthy leader. Shout out to Jess Ingrassalino. I always pronounce her name incorrectly, but she's. I was at Salesforce at the time, and she really framed our manual testing as they weren't manual testers; they were exploratory testers.
Oh,
I
I
think
like
that was like an important framing because, and it also showed in the team that she was bringing together in terms of testers that I think had that like key quality that I was saying earlier of just being curious and thinking, it from different angles and getting creative with issues and not just taking that. I think as Sheetal was talking about, not just taking the developer's point of view, typically of whatever the area they're focusing on, but just an all-encompassing end-to-end kind of perspective, and just really seeing manual testers as they're not just running through steps, they're actually exploring and finding other situations. Like you can't automate that, at least not today. Maybe AI will get there at one point, but today that exploring and that creativity, it still requires that human piece and that just creative seems the word I just keep coming back to, but it just requires that creativity of a human today. That I think a healthy organization that has positioned their testers in that way, they shouldn't really be scared of automation, but instead they should be excited about using those exploratory testers to automate using their creativity. And hopefully the tools themselves will just kind of take care of the automation piece of it.
I really love that. We have a lot of exciting things on exploit testing cooking as we speak, but I guess that's for some other day. Hey, for the audience who are listening to this, please, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. If you have questions for the panelists, do drop them in the chat and we'll pick them. So we kind of derailed from what I was asking and kind of come to my mind that I have to ask this question because I personally felt at some point in life threatened by test automation. And the question I was asking is artificial intelligence, machine learning. We spoke from a tooling point of view, but what is the kind of impact they're going to have on a tester? What kind of things that the tester would need to worry if artificial intelligence and machine learning is taking over in certain directions? And Julian, I think you spoke about, especially with this auto healing, that a tester needs to really come in and take that call currently, whether it's a real failure or it's a bug, or if it's just a flaky thing. Any thoughts on that topic in particular? Let's start with Julian.
Yeah. Could you ask that one more time? I just want to make sure I fully understood.
Yes. What's going to be the impact of artificial intelligence and machine learning? So we spoke from a tooling lot more, and I'm interested now from a tester's point of view. And what are the things that they need to be worried about, as in even when they are testing? What are the things that they would be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the same things, but just doing them, I guess, in a more granular way. Like ideally, if automation, if AI, machine learning, if they're taking care of like the obvious situations, like I don't know, misspellings or maybe incorrect colors for accessibility testing, aspect ratios, things like that. Ideally, if these tools are taking care of like some of the bigger, more obvious situations, I think the individual tester, they're really going in and looking for what is often thought of as edge cases, and they're thinking of maybe even combining scenarios. And so instead of just looking for the situation where the aspect ratio is off, they're also looking at that and looking for the hidden button that it's hiding behind, still trying to click it, seeing what happens there, and seeing if they get into a situation where they cause it like a catastrophic failure that probably an AI tool, they would have just stopped at that first like failure and not taken a few steps further. But just thinking about the way that the human is going to interact with this tool and really going down that path and like thinking about your different wants and desires and the ways a human might creatively like get around a failure. I think those kind of situations, that's what an individual tester will really have to focus on when the AI is ideally looking for those other situations.
Yeah. Deepa, the thoughts?
Yeah, Nikhil. So I agree with Julian, and I understand what he's saying. So see, any artificial intelligence works on data. Okay, so
Right.
you got to have that data in background for any application, like say blockchain. Nowadays, there are so many new technologies coming, and if there is no data, there is no AI. So and who is going to implement this? I mean, to make the bot understand and to implement the bot there, you need a tester there. So as and when the technology evolves, there will be a lot of more scope for the testers to learn new things and contribute there to implement the algorithm for that artificial intelligence. You need a tester there to understand the requirement of that bot. You have to have a tester there. So I think with the evolving technology, and I've always seen in my career, as and when the technology upgrades itself, there's more and more demand coming in market. Like say for example, not only testers. You take an example of people focusing on niche technologies and then implementing Salesforce, especially for sales implementation. Then they go to other tools like NetSuite, Oracle, ServiceNow, integrated together everything, and there's so much of integration there, right? So today you have Workday for your HR. So there's so many things there, and unless you have a data, these applications are going to evolve in future, and there will be always a need of a tester to do that testing manually first, then do the automation, and then implement the AI so that it can be used. So technology, the more the technology evolves, there is more the demand grows. So I think as and when the technology will evolve, there will be more and more requirement for the testers. There will be more demand.
Indeed so. Sheetal, so what's the impact on this tester now when AI is doing a large part of the job? What is this guy? What is this person needs to watch out, do differently?
I think it majorly impacts the testers because, as Deepa correctly mentions, AI ML models all are data driven. It's all about the data science, how the patterns are, understanding those patterns, identifying those patterns, and that's where we build our AI automations around. So, with the new AI and ML models being introduced, testers now need to think through how they can be more innovative and understand the patterns which they can currently see in the data and which could be in there in future. So they have to be more creative in thinking about the scripts they are developing. So even though you need to configure the bots based on the AI and ML, you need to think through the patterns recognition. You have to have that mind where you can think, okay, right now I have so much data. What if that data grows over the time? What could be the emerging pattern in near future? So AI and ML can only automate what we are currently doing as a human repetitively. It cannot do an one-time task and call it as an automation. So for that, you need testers. They need to build the scripts to test whatever AI ML is building. So it's not gonna go away like, okay, AI and ML is building everything and I don't need the testing anymore, because the quality is imperative.
Yeah.
How you're bringing that element is very important.
Yeah, I like what you said about this whole data and that the AI and ML models are built on this data, and it's that how. So for people who are hearing this out, when AI and ML is doing stuff, you don't need more technology to break it. You just need to be more creative to understand, hey, what is this model really understanding from the data? What is the pattern that it's picking? What is the next bit it is generating? How can I break it? How can I give it a data set which is out of its understanding? So you don't need to be technically skilled for that. You need to be creative and thinking out of the box. That's a very good one. Any other thoughts on this topic?
I was just gonna add, you kind of got me thinking down this path. It's another buzzword that's gotten really popular lately, but this idea of prompt engineering, which is just basically the idea of like, how do you talk to these chatbots or these AI tools and interact with them in a way that is going to get you to the outcome that you would like. And so I think that's just like a real practical tool that I recommend really anybody in technology at least take a look in and begin to learn. But I think especially testers can benefit from learning how to interact with an AI in a way that supports what they're already doing and enhancing what they're doing. It could be I talked about like doing test scripts and things like that, but that other piece that could be really important is the human interaction and making sure that on the business side that things are going well within your interaction as a QA within your org and sharing your value. And I could say for myself, I've used these tools like ChatGPT a lot to just help me write emails to my manager or to directors and to other people in the org, and just make sure I'm communicating the value of what I've done and trying to maybe turn it into a dollar amount if that is helping to push that narrative along. And so, yeah, just getting good with interacting with AIs through things like prompt engineering, I think could be really useful.
Good. Thanks a lot for that. I'm going to take a step back and still solve today's problem. And the problem that we would like to solve is how to involve and better integrate testers into development, into software development lifecycle. Sheetal.
Oh, yes, I think that's a very interesting and very valid question. And it's the same thing I have been trying to implement in all the projects which I am currently implementing. The most important principle that all the architects, those are currently trying to follow, is a test-driven development. So you're not, as Julian mentioned, putting it at the end where you're done with the development and there is like, okay, I need to launch it and that's why I need to test it. That cannot be sustainable anymore for any of the projects. So your testers needs to be involved from the early stages, from the discovery, design. Even if you're making any kind of a changes into your design, let it them be a passive listeners on those calls, but they need to understand from their own perspective what is the application that we are trying to build, whom we are targeting the application for, what are the challenges that they are currently facing, which my technical team is trying to solve. Unless you involve testers in all those discussions, no matter how good tool you're using or technology you're using, it's going to have some kind of a gap into that. So as early as you can involve them, make them aware what is the kind of a testing that you accept. Like, for example, there are certain applications, if I'm taking an example where it is putting data into Salesforce, and let's take an example of Health Cloud. It has a private information, a personal information, which is supposed to be protected by the GDPR. How we are testing that? How imperative or how critical it is for testing to make sure there is no data breach into that. That you need to make your tester aware. If your data is getting, like, for example, out of Salesforce, stored on AWS, bringing back into a Salesforce, how you can make sure there is no kind of any cross-site scripting or any kind of a clickjack protection that there is there. So you need to tell your testers upfront what is the testing that is required, not only from the data perspective, but all the breaches and all kind of other data privacy and privacy issues which might land up in the later phase into a red zone for your projects. So I think that's where developers, testers, architects, everywhere needs to be very closely working together.
Bring as early as possible into
Yes.
software development. That's good. Deepa, any thoughts?
Yeah, very much the same what you and Sheetal mentioned. Bringing and of course Julian has been talking about it from beginning. Like having testers from the beginning is very important. As we are expecting, we are expecting the testers to think out of box. You don't want your tester to really depend on the BA to tell him the requirement and always training him on what to test and not. So it's very important for him to be involved in all phases. And I think nowadays, with this so many implementations happening in a short time period, like 3 months, 6 months, you get maximum to roll out your application. It becomes more important for a tester to join throughout the journey, because you can't involve somebody suddenly at some point of time and ask him to do some testing. And if even if you do that, that's not going to be really productive, and it won't give you a ROI. But think of an application which is rolled out on production, and users use it, and they find there are issues. Your application is going to get less rating, and it's not going to be of any use. All the efforts and all the implementation that you did for the project is going to go on a vain if that product is getting low rating. So it's very, and there is so many technology available in market. It's very easy for a customer to switch from one application to another. If you don't like it, he'll just switch. So it's very important to have testers there.
Julian, any additional thoughts to that?
Not really. Just do it. Just bring them in. Treat them as 20 customers in one, and bring them early into the process.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, I have a question for you guys that's coming from the audience. So the question is, to what degree should the developers on the team write testing and anticipate the needs of the customer in those tests before giving it out to QA testers, before giving to the QA expertise? Now, to what degree? It's like an open-ended question. So any thoughts on that?
I mean,
Anyone?
Yeah, I'll throw out there like as much as possible, but also I think just the nature of the question, it almost sounds like there's like I'm hearing somewhat of what sounds like a handoff, but I would actually discourage just that notion and really just, again, bringing that tester in early. That goes for the developer as well. Before you even start the code, just when you have that idea of what the problem you're going to tackle, start conversing with a tester to talk about like what you're planning to do, because they can probably, again, use their superpower of testing in their mind and just start to give you thoughts about how will this work? Will it be efficient? The bugs that they're probably going to find already, they're just guessing, and that you can prevent. When it gets to actually writing the individual tests, getting really, I guess, practical, specific to Salesforce, I'll just say I always recommend doing as much as possible in unit testing, Apex unit testing. That's going to be the cheapest solution by far versus like going through the entire UI, and UI tests can always be fragile, expensive, can break. Do as much as you can. And again, you can bring the tester into that process of how you're going to write those unit tests. You can explain to them those unit tests that you're about to write. And when I say unit tests, it really could be effectively more like integration tests that you're just writing in Apex, some more complex situations. And you can be explaining this to the tester and just getting their thoughts and getting their approval. And they might give you some additional test ideas, and you can add those into your repertoire.
All right, guys. In spirit of time, I would like to wrap up. And the three things that I at least learned from the great discussion that we had. A is that you can come into QA from all walks of life and be successful. B is the gentle nudge for the business that, hey, QA is really the voice of the customer. And the third thing I learned today was that to beat AI in testing, you just need to be more creative than the AI itself. With that note, I would really like to thank you for the great discussion that we had. And it was lovely having a chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nikhil, and thank you entire
Thank
Capado team for having us here. It was really a nice and great. I think it's a short time, but still, it was worth it.
1 hour. But yeah, there's so much to talk. We can go on and on. But thanks for inviting us here, and it was a good discussion. Nice to see you, Sheetal and Julian.
Yeah, same
Same
here.
here.
Feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I always love to connect after with anybody who's watching this. Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. Thank you all the audience as well, and have a great day.